She said she was working late, but what I found shattered my world. I walked in on her with another man. The betrayal hit me like a ton of bricks. Stay tuned for the full story, and don't forget to subscribe for more shocking real-life moments. When I first met Claire, it felt like everything fell into place. She was intelligent, beautiful, and had this warmth about her that drew people in. We clicked right away, and over the years, we built a life together. Our relationship had been easy, the kind where we supported each other through everything. It didn't seem like we had any secrets, and I trusted her completely. Claire was everything I had ever wanted in a partner, and I truly believed we had something special. We were together for 3 years, and during that time, I thought I knew everything about her. We would spend our evenings talking about our dreams, our goals, our future. Every plan I made for the future, I made with Claire by my side. I couldn't imagine a life without her. She had become my best friend, my confidant, my partner. But in the last few months, something started to feel different. It was subtle at first. Small things, like her coming home later than usual or her being distracted when we spent time together. She had always been a career-driven person, so I didn't think much of it at first. I told myself that she was just busy with work and that everything was fine. But as the days went on, the changes in her behavior became more noticeable. She started pulling away, her messages became shorter, and when I asked her about it, she brushed it off, claiming it was just stress from work. I tried to ignore the nagging feeling I had. I told myself it was nothing, that I was overthinking it, but deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Still, I didn't want to be the paranoid boyfriend, so I pushed it to the back of my mind. After all, Claire had always been honest with me, and I trusted her. But as the weeks went by, I found myself growing more and more distant, not just emotionally, but physically. Something inside me told me to watch for the signs, but I wasn't sure what I was looking for. Then came the night that changed everything. Claire had told me she was staying late at work to finish up some urgent projects. She even texted me a few times throughout the night to update me on her progress. I had no reason to doubt her. She had always been reliable, and I believed her every word. That evening, I decided to spend some time by myself, watch a movie, catch up on some work, and just relax. But as the hours passed, I found myself feeling uneasy again. I didn't know why, but the same feeling of something being off gnawed at me. Around 11 p.m., I got a message from her saying that she would be heading home soon. I thought nothing of it and continued with my evening. But about an hour later, I got a text from Claire saying that she would be working late again and that she might crash at her co-worker's place because it was too late to come home. She said it was the last thing she needed to do to wrap up her project. Something inside me snapped. That little voice in my head grew louder. I don't know why, but I had this gut feeling that something wasn't right. I grabbed my coat, threw on my shoes, and decided to drive to her office. Maybe I was just being paranoid, but I couldn't ignore the feeling any longer. When I arrived at her office building, there were no cars in the parking lot. The lights were dim, and the building was eerily quiet. I stood outside for a moment, feeling conflicted. Was I overreacting? Should I just go back home? But my feet were already moving toward the door, and I pushed it open. To my shock, Claire's car was parked in the corner of the lot. I froze for a moment, trying to make sense of it. Why was she still here? The office was dark, and there was no sign of anyone. My curiosity, mixed with the growing sense of suspicion, led me to sneak up to the window of her office. And then I saw it. My heart sank as I watched Claire through the glass. She wasn't alone. She was sitting across from a man I had never seen before, laughing and sharing an intimate moment. The way they looked at each other. It was as if they were more than just coworkers. My heart felt like it had stopped beating in that moment. I wanted to move, to do something, but I couldn't. I was frozen, staring at the woman I loved. The woman who had lied to me about being at work, who was now with another man in a way that no one should ever be with someone else's partner. It felt like the world was spinning around me as I tried to process what I was seeing. There was no mistaking it. They were close, and they were laughing together like they had a secret. My chest tightened as I realized the truth. Claire had been hiding something from me, and I was standing right there, powerless to stop it. I couldn't take it anymore. The weight of everything hit me all at once. The lies, the secrecy, and the betrayal. I turned and walked away from the window, feeling my heart break into 1,000 pieces. I didn't know how I managed to drive home that night. The anger and pain inside me clouded my mind, making it hard to think straight. I barely even remembered the drive back, my thoughts spinning, replaying the scene I had just witnessed over and over again. Claire, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone, was with someone else. I felt betrayed not just by her, but by myself for not seeing it sooner. How could I have been so blind? I parked in the driveway, not sure if I wanted to confront her yet. What would I even say? How could I ask her about what I had seen without completely falling apart? As I sat there, I realized I couldn't just let it go. This wasn't something I could ignore. I had to know the truth. The minutes ticked by as I sat in the car, my hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to gather the courage to go inside and face her. Part of me wanted to confront her right away, to yell, to make her feel the same pain I was feeling. But another part of me, some quieter, more rational part, knew that wasn't the answer. If I wanted the truth, I had to be calm. I had to think clearly. The last thing I wanted was to lose control completely. Finally, I stepped out of the car, my legs heavy as I walked to the front door. As I opened it, I was hit with the familiar smell of our apartment, her perfume, the scent of dinner she had cooked earlier. It felt so normal, so familiar, and yet, everything had changed. I was walking into the same space I had shared with her for years, but now it felt like a different world. I walked into the living room, and there she was, sitting on the couch, her phone in her hands, casually scrolling. She looked up at me, her face brightening when she saw me. "Hey babe, you're home early. How was your night?" For a moment, I stood there, unsure of what to say. I wanted to ask her everything, the questions that had been racing through my mind. Why? How long? Who is he? But I didn't ask any of that yet. Instead, I just stood there, looking at her. She looked so normal, like everything was just fine, like nothing had changed. "I thought you were working late," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She nodded, smiling. "I was. I told you I would be, remember? The project was bigger than I thought." I didn't respond. I couldn't. The words were stuck in my throat. I had to make her face the truth, but I didn't want to destroy everything in one breath. I was struggling to keep my composure. The betrayal was still raw, still fresh. I took a deep breath, and for a moment, I almost backed out of confronting her. But I knew I had to. I walked over and sat beside her on the couch. The distance between us, which had always been invisible, was suddenly so palpable. I looked at her, forcing myself to stay calm. I wasn't angry, at least not yet. I just wanted answers. "I saw you tonight," I said quietly. Her eyes widened slightly, and she put her phone down, the smile fading. "What do you mean?" "I saw you," I repeated, my voice steady. "At the office, with him." The silence hung heavy between us. Her face went pale, and I saw the moment her guilt started to seep through. She shifted uncomfortably, looking anywhere but at me. Her fingers fidgeted with the hem of her shirt, and I could tell she was struggling to find the right words. "Grace," she began, her voice trembling. "It's not what you think." I swallowed hard, trying to keep my emotions in check. "Then explain it to me, Claire. Because right now it looks like you've been lying to me. All this time you've been telling me you were working, But tonight, I saw you with him. I saw the way you two were together. Don't tell me it's not what I think, because I know what I saw." She finally met my gaze, her eyes filled with shame. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I never wanted you to find out this way." "Then why didn't you just tell me the truth?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Why lie to me? Why keep this from me for so long?" Claire's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know. I was scared. I didn't want to hurt you. I never meant for it to get this far, but it did. And I'm so sorry, Grace." I stood up abruptly, my heart racing. "Sorry doesn't fix this, Claire," I said, my voice hoarse. "Sorry doesn't undo what you've done. You've shattered everything. Everything I thought was real is gone." She stood up, reaching out for me, but I stepped back. "I never thought it would happen like this," she said, her voice full of regret. "I swear it wasn't planned. It just happened." I shook my head. "That's what they all say, Claire. But it doesn't change the fact that you betrayed me. And I don't know if I can ever forgive you for that." The tears in her eyes were undeniable, but I wasn't sure if I even cared anymore. "I don't know what to do with this," I muttered. "I don't know if I can keep living with this lie hanging over me." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence felt deafening, like we were standing on the edge of something we couldn't take back. The days after our confrontation were the hardest I had ever experienced. I was living in a haze, unsure of how to process the overwhelming emotions that were consuming me. I thought I knew Claire better than anyone, but now everything felt like a lie. My mind was stuck on the same question: how could she do this to me? But no matter how many times I asked it, I couldn't come up with an answer. Each day felt like an emotional roller coaster. Some moments, I would feel numb, disconnected from reality, while others would be filled with raw anger and deep sadness. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I tried to distract myself with work, but even that felt meaningless. Everything reminded me of Claire. The little things, like the coffee she used to make for me in the mornings, or the way she would always leave her favorite sweater on the back of the chair. I hadn't spoken to Claire since our argument. She had sent me several texts, calling and apologizing, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. I didn't know if I was ready to hear her explanations or excuses. I didn't know if I was ready to hear why she had lied to me, or if her reasons would even matter in the end. At some point, I realized that I needed to stop being consumed by the hurt. I needed to start moving forward, even if it felt impossible. But I couldn't do that until I understood what had happened. I needed closure, not just from her, but for myself. I couldn't heal without understanding what went wrong. I reached out to a therapist, someone I had always been hesitant to talk to, but now I realized I needed help. I needed someone to guide me through the pain, to help me make sense of it. The sessions were a struggle at first. I wasn't used to being so vulnerable, to laying my feelings bare to a stranger. But over time, I began to open up. I talked about my relationship with Claire, the trust that had been broken, and the overwhelming sense of betrayal that weighed on me. Through therapy, I started to see things more clearly. I realized that the pain I was feeling wasn't just about Claire's actions. It was about the betrayal of my own trust in her, and the fact that I had placed my worth in someone else's hands. I had relied on her too much to define my happiness, and when she shattered my trust, it felt like my entire sense of self had been torn apart. But therapy also helped me understand that healing was a choice. I could choose to stay angry, to hold on to the pain, and let it define me. Or I could choose to let go, to rebuild myself and find happiness again, even if that meant walking away from Claire. I couldn't keep living in this emotional fog. I couldn't keep waiting for answers from someone who had already shown me who they were. I had to take back control of my life, no matter how difficult that might be. I wasn't ready to forgive Claire, but I realized that forgiveness wasn't for her. It was for me. Holding on to anger and resentment wasn't going to help me heal. It was only going to keep me stuck in the past. One afternoon, after weeks of silence, I received a message from Claire. It was simple, just a few words. Can we talk? I stared at the message for a long time, my heart racing. I didn't know if I was ready to face her, but I knew that if I wanted closure, I had to hear her out. Maybe I would find the answers I was looking for, or maybe I would find the strength to move on. Either way, I knew that I couldn't avoid the conversation forever. I agreed to meet her the next day at a park near our apartment. I was nervous, but I knew that I needed to do this. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I knew that it was time to face the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The next day, I arrived at the park early. I sat on a bench, my hands trembling as I waited for her. I wasn't sure if I would feel relief or anger when I saw her again, but I was ready to face whatever came next. When Claire arrived, she looked different, smaller somehow, as if the weight of what she had done had taken a physical toll on her. She walked toward me slowly, her eyes filled with uncertainty. She sat down next to me without saying anything, and for a moment, we both just sat there, letting the silence stretch between us. I'm so sorry, Grace, she said quietly, her voice filled with regret. I never meant to hurt you. I don't know what came over me. I was selfish, and I was scared. I didn't know how to deal with my feelings, and I made the worst mistake of my life. I wish I could take it all back. I looked at her, trying to gauge if her words were sincere. I wanted to believe her, but after everything, I wasn't sure if I could. How long, Claire? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. How long has this been going on? She looked away for a moment, and when she spoke, her voice cracked. A few months. It started as just a friendship, but it became something more. I didn't want to admit it to myself, and I didn't know how to stop. The confession hit me like a punch to the gut. A few months? All this time, I had been living in a lie, believing she was still the woman I had fallen in love with. The betrayal was deeper than I had realized. And yet, as painful as it was, it gave me the clarity I needed. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said, my voice trembling with emotion. But I needed to hear the truth. I needed to know. Claire nodded, tears streaming down her face. I don't expect your forgiveness, Grace. I don't deserve it. I just want you to know how deeply sorry I am. You were everything to me, and I've lost that forever. For a long time, I didn't speak. I just sat there, processing the pain, the heartbreak. But deep down, I knew one thing. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of a new chapter. The following days after the conversation with Claire felt like a heavy weight was lifted, but at the same time, I couldn't shake the feeling of being adrift in a sea of confusion. I had finally gotten the truth, but it didn't make the pain go away. Claire's confession was a moment of clarity, but that didn't undo the damage she had caused. The trust we once had was gone, and I had no idea how to rebuild it, if it was even possible. I spent most of that time trying to process what I had learned. I was still angry, still hurt. Every time I thought I had taken a step forward, memories of the betrayal would hit me again. Claire had admitted that it had been going on for months, but she didn't know how to stop. That admission stung deeper than anything. It was one thing to be betrayed, but another to realize that the person you loved had made a conscious choice, again and again, to hurt you. Even though the betrayal was still fresh, something inside me knew that I couldn't stay in this painful limbo forever. I had to make a decision for my own sake. I couldn't keep replaying the past in my mind. I couldn't keep wondering if things could have been different. Claire had made her choices, and now I had to make mine. One evening, I went for a walk to clear my head. I had been spending more time outside lately, trying to disconnect from everything that reminded me of Claire, of our life together. The park was quiet, and the soft rustling of the trees in the breeze was oddly comforting. I sat down on a bench, looking at the city lights in the distance, and thought about everything that had happened. How had we gone from being so happy to this? How had I ended up here, in this moment of heartbreak and uncertainty? The pain was still there, but something inside me shifted as I thought about the future. I realized that I didn't need Claire to define who I was. I didn't need her to complete me. I had spent so much time trying to hold on to what we had, but in the process, I had lost sight of who I was without her. I had forgotten that my worth wasn't tied to anyone else's actions. I had allowed my emotions to be so deeply affected by her choices that I had forgotten to take care of myself. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't ready to forgive her. Not yet, maybe not ever. But I was ready to let go. Letting go didn't mean erasing the memories or the pain. It didn't mean pretending that it didn't hurt. Letting go meant that I was finally taking control of my own life. It meant choosing to move forward, even if I didn't have all the answers. I decided that I would stop waiting for closure from Claire. I didn't need her to fix what was broken because, in reality, she couldn't. The only person who could fix me was me. I had to heal on my own terms, without relying on her apology or any form of reconciliation. The next time I saw Claire, I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad either. I was just calm, grounded in the decision I had made. She looked at me with those sad, regretful eyes, but I didn't feel the same emotional pull that had held me captive for so long. I had released the grip her betrayal had on me. "I've been thinking," I said, my voice steady, "about us and about everything that's happened." Claire nodded, clearly nervous. "I know I've hurt you, and I understand if you don't want to talk to me anymore. I want you to know I'm so sorry." I took a deep breath. "I don't need you to keep apologizing, Claire. I know you're sorry. But I've realized something important. I can't keep holding on to this pain. I need to move forward. I need to heal. And that means letting go of what we had." There was silence between us for a moment, and I saw her face fall. She looked like she wanted to say something, but she didn't. There was nothing more to say. We had both said everything we needed to. "I'm letting go, Claire," I continued, "and I think it's time for both of us to move on." Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't try to argue. She just nodded, understanding that this was the end of our chapter. It wasn't the fairy tale ending I had once imagined, but it was the right one. As I walked away from her that day, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in weeks. I wasn't free of the hurt yet, but I was free from the emotional weight of trying to hold on to something that no longer existed. The healing process had begun, and though it was going to take time, I knew I was on the right path. I wasn't defined by Claire's actions. I was defined by my own strength, my own resilience. I had learned something valuable through this painful journey. I had learned that the only person responsible for my happiness was me. No one else could fix me. No one else could make things right. I had to do that for myself. And I was ready to move forward, ready to rediscover who I was and what I truly wanted in life. The future was mine to create, and I wasn't going to let the past dictate my path any longer. The days that followed felt like a slow but steady journey of reclaiming my life. With each step, I felt stronger, more independent, and more in control of my emotions. It wasn't easy. There were nights when the pain of what had happened would wash over me again, threatening to pull me back into the darkness. But the difference now was that I knew I had the power to overcome it. I wasn't the victim of Claire's choices anymore. I was choosing to heal. I spent more time focusing on my own well-being. I started exercising again, something I had neglected during the time I was wrapped up in the emotional turmoil of our relationship. Running became my escape, a way to release the pent up frustration and sadness I had been carrying. The physical exhaustion after each run became a symbol of the emotional release I was experiencing. Every step I took on that pavement was one step closer to letting go of the past. I also began to reconnect with my hobbies. I had always loved photography, but somewhere along the way I had lost touch with it. I bought a new camera and started exploring the city, capturing moments I would have otherwise missed. There was something healing about the process. Looking at the world through a different lens, seeing the beauty in the smallest things. It reminded me that life, despite the heartbreak, still had moments of joy waiting to be discovered. It wasn't just the physical activities or the hobbies that helped me heal, though. It was also the people around me. My friends and family had been incredibly supportive, but I had shut them out for so long while I focused on Claire. Now, I was ready to reconnect. I spent more time with the people who had always had my back. We talked about life, shared laughter, and reminded each other of the importance of real connections. I had been so consumed by my relationship with Claire that I had neglected these relationships, but I was determined to change that. I wasn't going to make the same mistake again. One night, as I sat at dinner with my closest friends, I realized just how much I had grown in such a short time. We laughed, shared stories, and talked about everything we had been through. For the first time in months, I felt light, like the weight that had been suffocating me was slowly lifting. I had found joy in the things that mattered most, and I knew that no matter what had happened with Claire, I was going to be okay. Then came the moment when I realized I was truly ready to move on. It wasn't when I forgave Claire, because forgiveness wasn't about her. It was about me finding peace. It wasn't when I decided to forget the past. It was about making peace with it. I didn't need to erase the pain. I needed to understand that it was a part of my journey, not my identity. And once I understood that, I realized I didn't have to keep carrying it with me. The decision to end things with Claire had been the hardest thing I'd ever done, but it was also the best decision I could have made. It had allowed me to rebuild myself, to reconnect with who I was before the relationship. I didn't need anyone to complete me. I was whole on my own. The love I had for Claire wasn't something I could just erase, but I had learned that I had to love myself more. I had to prioritize my own happiness, my own future. As the months passed, I gradually let go of the anger. The betrayal was still there, but it no longer held the power it once did. Claire and I never spoke again after that final conversation. She had apologized, and I had accepted that apology for what it was, a step toward her own growth. But the relationship was over. There was nothing left to fix. In time, I found myself meeting new people, slowly opening myself up to the possibility of love again. But I wasn't rushing into anything. I wasn't seeking validation or fulfillment from someone else. I was content with who I was, and if love found me again, it would be on my terms when I was ready. I had learned that I didn't need to force anything, and that the most important love I could have was the love for myself. Looking back on everything that had happened, I realized that what I had gone through was a turning point in my life. It had tested me in ways I didn't know I could be tested, but it had also shown me how strong I was, how resilient, and how capable of finding happiness and peace, even after betrayal. The future was no longer a place filled with uncertainty or fear. It was a place of possibility. I didn't know exactly what it would hold, but I knew I would face it head on, ready for whatever came my way. I had learned to trust myself again, and that was the most powerful lesson I could take with me. Betrayal can break you, but it can also build you. Through pain, we find our strength, and through forgiveness, we find peace. The most important relationship you can have is the one with yourself. Choose to heal, choose to move forward, and choose to live fully. Have you ever experienced betrayal in your relationship? How did you find your strength to move on? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of resilience and healing.